Hey guys, this is Fergal from PokerVIP, and welcome back to part 3 of Fergal's top tips for poker success. As in the previous couple of videos, we are playing over on GUTS Poker. We're going to be playing on the anonymous table, so for the most part we're going to be playing pretty readless. We might be able to get a little bit of history here and there with some players at the table, but obviously if people change around or anything we're not going to realise, so we're not going to be making too many opponent-specific plays. So what we're going to be focused on, as we have been in parts 1 and 2, is just a solid, fundamentally sound game of poker. So we're going to be focusing on 5 key areas. You'll recognise these if you have watched parts 1 and 2. We're going to be focusing on solid pre-flop ranges. We are going to be focusing on when to bet for value. We're going to be focusing on understanding what your opponent's bets mean, understanding your own relative hand strength and various board textures, and of course the overarching fundamental principle of any poker game, positional play. So how to use position to your advantage, how positions dictate what kinds of hands you play, and so on. So without further ado, we'll jump straight back into it. So over here on the bottom left table, we decided to defend with our 10-jack suited. We flop flush draw, which is perfectly reasonable. We pick up a pair, which, I mean, we're not in love with, but it does give us some additional outs. Any 10 or any jack now give us 2 pair of trips, and we of course still have all of the heart draws. We are going to check, and hopefully we get to see a free river. I'm not overly convinced that we will too frequently. We do, though. We like that. It does check through. The fact that it does, I mean, it gives some credibility to our 10. I mean, obviously we can never bet for value here, but depending on sizing here, if player 4 decides to bet, we may elect to go for a hero call, but hopefully he just checks back and we somehow win. I mean, he should be betting his king there 100% of the time. I think not betting is a pretty big blunder. Particularly on the turn, given how many potential heart draws. Like, between the two of us, there's a very good chance that at least one of us is on a draw. I think not betting there, again, would be a mistake. But we'll take it. As I said, I was going to consider calling down with 10-jack there. It would have depended on his sizing, of course. But when he checks back the turn, I just wasn't expecting him to show us too many strong kings. So, well, hey, we saved some money. We don't want too much. With the pocket 2s, we're just going to bet here because it's an ace-high board. It favours our range over our opponents because we are the pre-flop raiser. And, I mean, we're going to have the best hand here reasonably frequently, but if we check, it just allows him to take the initiative way too easily because he is in position. So kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier on, like positional play really does account for tons in any poker game, but like obviously Hold'em especially. And if we check here, it just puts us in a really gross spot because we're showing a lot of weakness, and we just allow him to take us off our hand really, really easily. I mean, he puts in the raise anyway, so it's irrelevant. But if we check there and he bets, we're just left in a really, really awkward spot. Whereas if we just fire out there, it just makes the hand way easier to play over round. So, we've been playing just for a minute or two before we started recording, so we won a couple of euro over on this table, as you can see. The other 2 tables, we are sitting around at starting stacks, so fingers crossed before the video is through, we'll have run up some stacks. I remember part 1, if I remember correctly, we had a bit of a losing session. Part 2, we negated that, so between the 2, we are up a little bit, but nothing to sing home about, so hopefully today we can do some damage, and as I said, win some stacks. So parts 3 and 4 we're going to be recorded back to back, so you'll see the progression of the session as we go. So deuce and the 8, obviously nothing we can do. There's no scenario where we're going to be putting any money in there. The fact that it's an undergun raise obviously makes it a trivial fold, but obviously there's no scenario at all where we are going to be opening here. The 9-jack suited though, we will be stealing from mid position. The 9 and the tray, obviously a fairly trivial fold as well. So we get this button to call here. This is the guy that we won some money off previously. Similar strategy, we're just going to fire mostly one and done here. There are some cards that we might elect to fire a second barrel on, but let's hope we just pick this up without a fight now. Any heart, any 10, any 8 gives us some additional equity. The ace is not the worst of cards at all to barrel as well though. This guy did call 2 streets and then fold the river though in our last hand, so he's proven he might be a little bit stickier than average. I just think this ace is just too good a card not to barrel though. So let's go ahead, we'll fire again. We're not going to bet river here against this guy though because he tanked down before he folded on the last hand. And I think he really wanted to call, and I just got the impression from him that he's just a little bit sticky. So if he has a king here and he decides to call turn, I think there's a pretty good chance he calls river. But there are a decent number of cards that there are a decent number of hands that he will fold to this ace. Unfortunately, he doesn't. As I said, we're not going to fire river. We're happy just to check and give this one up, unfortunately. And we just check fold. Unfortunately, we do not get to see what our opponent has. The king and the jack, reasonably standard open from under the gun. Some people would say it's a little bit too loose. I disagree. And we flop top pair. That's as good as any. Let's have a bet. Pretty standard half pot sizing here. It's a really bad card. Obviously the flushes get there and there's an overcard. Probably the worst card in the deck for us. I'm still not convinced we can fold just to a single bet. We'll see what sizing this guy elects to choose. It's a really unfortunate size. Yeah, okay, we're going to let this one go. This, as I said, this is just such a horrendously bad card for us. And we can never call two streets there. And there's a pretty decent chance that he elects to bluff rivers. So we're just in a spot where if we're calling turn just to fold the river there, I think we're just kind of spewing away money. And I'm not convinced that we're going to be able to turn a solid profit by calling down there. So a lot of other cards we are happy to call down. Obviously, as I said, just the ace. The fact that the flush draw gets there coupled with the ace is just a disaster for our hand all around. The ace and the 8 we're going to use as a 3-bet bluff versus a button open. We're going to ISO here versus the limper with the suited ace, take the betting initiative pre-flop. We got one fold here, hopefully the button folds. If he calls, we'll resort to plan B. Flopping two pair, not top two, but two pair nonetheless. Let's have a bet. Snap fold, unfortunately. That king, if he had called, that king obviously would have been a pretty bad card for us anyway, but we wouldn't have minded if he had stuck around in general. Just the king would have been a pretty bad card for us. But obviously we would have preferred action before we knew the king was going to roll off, of course. And the pocket fives, we are happy to call and see a flop multi-way here. Kind of sucks that we're out of position, but I mean, obviously in a multi-way pot, that's kind of what you want to be doing with pocket pairs. It's ideal. It's unfortunate that we get squeezed behind. We're just going to be letting this go because we're not getting the correct implied price to draw. Sucks that it goes multi-way. Fingers crossed we don't see a 5. We do not, so we don't mind. Not that we would have minded either way. We're not going to be able to turn a profit there by calling when we are out of position. The main reason being that if we just flat there, it kind of like it announces that we have like so many pocket pairs, and if we do hit a set, it's going to be pretty tricky to get stacks in. So we're in a situation where, you know, it's going to be difficult for us to get tons and tons of money in post flop when we do hit. So we're not going to be able to play our hand in such a way when we're out of position there to turn a solid profit when we're only getting that price. Going to flat the ace jack here again. As hand we can definitely opt to 3-bet. But calling is perfectly viable here as well. One of like the worst flops possible for us, really. It's monotone. We don't have a heart to go along with our hand. So we have ace jack high, which I mean sometimes is the best hand, but he's going to have a heart in his hand a lot of the time, like a very decent chunk of the time. And there is just a ton of bad runouts, and we still only have ace high. So trying to do anything there would be a bit of a spew. We're going to use this as a 3-bet on the button with the 8 and the 10 of the blue. Eight deuce, we really don't like folding to min raises, but I mean 8 deuce is just such a trashy hand when we're out of position. So even though we're getting 3.5 to 1 there, we're just not going to be able to turn a profit there like out of position. So we just have to let it go, unfortunately. But I really don't like folding my big blind to min raises. I will defend it extremely wide, but just not quite that wide. We're going to see a multi-way flop here with the suited ace. And we take it down with the 8-10 suited, which obviously is a fine result for us. If we get called there are a decent number of okay flops for us as well, but our first choice preference would be just to take it down without a fight, of course. Lock up the couple of big blinds profit. And 10 jack suited, pretty trivial open here. We flop a pair. We are going to check this back, pot control it a little bit, see if we can induce some bluffs. When we check back the flop, there's very few runouts that we're ever going to fold. So we're going to call. We improve to 2 pair, which is pretty nice, and we pick up aces, which is also nice. So here we're in a situation where, I mean, he definitely has some hands that beat us, but I just don't see too much value in raising here. It sucks when, if he's a hand like ace king or, like, I mean, he didn't 3-bet pre, so it's kind of hard for him to have ace king. He can have like king queen, but I'm not convinced he bets that. So I think he's going to be bluffing or have us beat here a reasonably large amount of the time. and he does have a speed, so we don't lose too much with our 2-pair, which is a pretty reasonable hand. And it kind of goes through to what I was saying. Like, I mean, I think it's a board that he's going to be bluffing on a reasonable chunk of the time, I think. But not like, you know, not tons and tons and tons. Like, I wasn't in love with the calling there, but I think we have to. Like, I don't think we can ever fold. But I'm not shocked to see his beat there. That's what I'm kind of getting at. Very safe flop here for our aces. I mean, he can have some sets, sure, but if he has a set here, we're going to be going broke pretty much always. The 4 is a really good card for us. It reduces his set combos. I think we're going to check here and try to get him to bet and overpair himself, which I think he's going to show us a reasonable amount of the time. Hand like pocket jacks, for example, would make a lot of sense to this line. So he does bet, and we're just going to rip it ourselves. There's €15 in the pot already. And he'll need, when we put the extra money in, he's going to have to call just over an extra tenner to win like 31. So he's getting 3-1. If he has an overpair, it's going to be pretty tricky for him to fold. And as I said, if he has his beat here, we're just going to be giving him all of the money anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And I don't think he's going to be bluffing rivers either. So he folds. So I'm guessing it's, I think it's very unlikely he folded an overpair. So I guess it's most likely that he decided to float the flop in position and then take a stab at it when we showed weakness. So it looks like we probably picked up an extra bet there rather than if we had just barreled ourselves. Sorry, excuse me. And we get 3-bet here. We don't like defending these types of hands when we're out of position. If we were in position getting this price, we would be calling, but just being out of position just makes the hand a lot trickier. Now, I mean, a call wouldn't be a complete disaster, but I would not be of the opinion that we'll be turning a profit all long term with it. So we're just going to go ahead and make the fold. We're not going to be losing like chunks either. Like, it's going to be relatively close to break even, but why lose more money than we have to in the long run, right? A pretty difficult board for our opponent to have connected strongly with here, so we are... He just donks out for pot. I mean, I don't really believe him, but I mean, some people will just do this with a 9, and obviously he's never folding a 9, so it's the kind of spot where I wouldn't hate making a play, but again, kind of going back to we don't really have any reads on this opponent. If we had a HUD and we had a bit of information about what kind of hands he donks, what kind of frequency he donks with, that kind of thing, we might be able to change our play. But without any reads, we're just going to resort to, as I said, the kind of the standard, solid, ABC, fundamentally sound strategy, basically. And just to show you that, you know, beating these games is not overly difficult. We get min-raised here, which is interesting. We're going to re-raise. I mean, calling just seems bad. But, I mean, obviously, this min-raise line sometimes, like, some players will just do this exclusively with aces, but, I mean, they shouldn't be. And some people just do it with really, really strange hands as well. So, I mean, if he has aces there, then, you know, GG, sir. We're not going to be too upset about that, but we're just going to raise. And, like, when he min-raises, he's telling us he's a bad player. So we're going to assume that when he doesn't have hands like pocket aces, that he's going to be making a lot of other mistakes as well. So we don't mind getting involved in pots of them. We pick up a gut shot here, but it's, I mean, this is a really bad board in general for us. Like, this ace is it's a pretty good card for him to continue barreling on, but I don't tend to give our opponents too much credit when it comes to recognizing these spots. And his sizing, it just seems like it's fairly value heavy here, so we're going to make a somewhat tight fold. And this is a really bad card for us here, obviously. It goes check, check. I mean, I don't hate that, but I still don't expect us to win here very often at all. I don't expect us to win here very often at all. We're not going to be calling to find out. And we're going to be bringing it in for an open with the 10-jack off suit. Unfortunately, the button calls, which we would have preferred to be in position. If we were going to get any caller, we would have preferred it to be from the blinds exclusively. But hey, we can't have it all, am I right? We're going to bet this, and bet reasonably large, and look to barrel a decent number of turn cards. This is a pretty bad card for us to barrel. Any big card, basically, we were going to fire on, but the 7, it's just a pretty bad card for us in general to rep, so if we bet again, it just looks pretty bluffy. because it's kind of hard for us to have hit that board that hard. When we're out of position, if the big blind had decided to call and he had checked us again there is an option to bet again, because he's shown that extra bit of weakness by checking to us. But that's kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier on with the power of position. Because we're out of position against that guy, he's got a very uncapped range on that board. Like, he has all of the sets, which would then be full houses on the turn, and all sorts of pair plus draws, some straights, that kind of thing. And, you know, it's kind of hard for us to have, you know, that many really strong hands there. So it's a board that favors his range over ours, essentially. The pocket trays here, it's not a very good board for us. I mean, it's not the worst by any stretch, but it's definitely not a particularly good one. If it's checked to us again, I will fire to protect our hand a little bit. If we do fire, we're essentially turning our hand into a stone cold bluff, because I don't expect us to fold out better hands very often at all, like maybe pocket fours, that kind of thing. But what we are doing with the bet would be to protect our hand, because if we do have the best hand, any 7, any 10, and any overcard is bad for us. So we would have gone ahead with a small kind of half pot bet to protect our hand a little bit. But unfortunately we get let into anyway, or possibly fortunately. I mean, I wouldn't have loved a bet there, but as I said, I just think it's going to be better than checking and giving up completely, basically. No action with the kings, which is unfortunate, but we do pick up the initial raise, which is fine. And we defend it here with the 8 and the 10. It's checked to us twice. We're going to take the initiative here and have a bet, see if we can get our opponent to fold. I was going to barrel rivers, but when we pick up some showdown value, I'm not convinced that that's our best option anymore. Although it's kind of hard to see what he has that beats us right now, to be perfectly honest. We check back here for pot control and the ace rolls off, which is bad. Yeah, we're just going to check this back and get our hand to showdown. These pocket fours, it's possible we missed a little bit of value there, but I wouldn't be completely convinced that he calls us down there with pocket fours. And our pair of tens is good, which we like. No set, but definitely not a disastrous board for us. That's a pretty disastrous turn for us. We're just going to lead here. We're going to lead big once and just hopefully get our opponent to fold any of his high cards, which are obviously better than us. We're not going to bet again. We're just going to check give up. When he calls, I think he's going to show us ace high a lot, and it's just the aces. Okay, fair enough. We were never getting that to fold, obviously. Basically, I was just hoping he had a kind of a worse than ace high hand, and he was just planning on giving up. It wasn't a board he wanted to continue on. Maybe that was a little bit optimistic on my part, actually, because I feel there's a reasonable chance he bets his air on that board. So when he does check back, yeah, maybe that was a mistake on my part. We're going to defend here with the suited ace. Pretty bad board overall, so again, one of those spots where we just let it go, move on to the next hand. And pretty easy steal here with a semi-connected jack. It's close to the bottom of our stealing range, but it's still definitely in it. We're going to bet here, and we are going to bet turns too. We don't have to. It's just a board that's very, very tricky for our opponent to have connected with, basically. And we're going to go for the steal with another Broadway hand from the button. I have to say, like, the value on these anonymous tables seems to be really, really good. I've been playing them a reasonable amount, and the overall standard just seems incredibly soft. And the rake structure on MPN, so the likes of GUTS, is just incredibly good compared to a ton of other sites. So they look like they're going to be very, very profitable. With the anonymous tables, though, you don't get hand histories, so you can't actually track your results properly. Like, obviously, you can check your bank balances and keep track of it yourself, but you don't get hand histories, which is, I mean, in some ways it's a downside, but in other ways it's actually really good, because the fact that you don't get hand histories and that HUDs aren't compatible with the anonymous sites, it means that it really discourages a lot of the other regs. Because a lot of regs kind of, like, that's one thing I've noticed, like, a lot of people, they get kind of over reliant on HUDs And that's like a really bad thing. Like, you should never be that reliant on your HUD. Like, sure, it's if you use one, it can help guide your play in some situations, but I mean, in general, it shouldn't be making your decisions for you, basically. Like, you know, you should really be, it should only be making minor deviations to your game based on some bits of information in your HUD. This is a fun little turn. That is not a very good river, though. What we are going to do, though, is overbet huge and try to get him to fold a chop. Which we do, we'll take it. So it's not like where, I mean, he 3-bets, so it just means he just never has a 6, whereas we can have pocket 6s. So if he calls there, he's calling specifically to chop, which is never fun when you're facing like a 2.5 or 3x overbet. So yeah, we don't mind doing that at all. Puts him in the cage a little bit. And here we're getting 7-1, so we're just going to flick it in and see if we can hit our gut shot. We do not. Flop triples on the top right table, we don't mind that. And we're just going to let this go. I mean, he's only min betting, like, but we're just never ahead here. We're going to check raise here just because it's kind of bored where people don't tend to believe check raises because it just looks really, really bluffy. And now we just have quads. I think he's going to be on the defensive a little bit with his overpairs, so I don't think he's going to be betting a hand like pocket 10s if we checked him. So we're just gonna bet ourselves 3 streets here. Daily quads, always fun. The ace kind of stinks. I don't think he ever has ace highs here, or very rarely anyway. Maybe like ace king, but I think that's pretty unlikely. But like like all of his other hands are like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, those kinds of hands. We're just gonna go slightly under half pot here. That, like, I mean, if that ace doesn't roll off, we're gonna be betting huge there. Like if another, like if a 4 rolls off or something like that, we're gonna be betting absolutely massively, basically, because I just don't think people fold overpairs. But when the ace does come in, we can't overbet, for example, because an overbet is just going to get him to fold pocket 10s always. So we're just going to bet an amount where we think he will call with that type of hand. If he does have an ace there, obviously we missed value, but I don't think he shows us too much ace highs there. I think when he bet calls and then calls the turn, I think he shows us an overpair, or even maybe an underpair, like pocket 8s, pocket 7s, those types of hands. He can show us those hands relatively frequently compared to ace highs. And the ace king of blue, going to be good enough to play. We'll make it 50 cent to go, dealer. We got 3-bet here. We got 3-bet pretty big. We're just going to 4-bet and then not fold if he jams. Let's see some diamonds, please, dealer. Running diamonds? Do it, do it, do it. Nope. It's always dirty when that happens and you get it in. But hey, I mean, we had the marginal equity advantage, so it's going to happen us more than it's going to happen him. It's never fun when you're in his shoes there and you have the diamond roll off on the turn. It's never a fun sweat when they're just re-rolling you there. It's always fun for us, though. We pick up a pair here, which, I mean, it's not quite the nuts, but I mean, it's going to be a head, like, very often. We're going to bet really, really small here. So the problem is they're going to have very few hands that can pay us, basically. But we are going to try and just bet really, really tiny. And here, because it's going 3-way, we're going to call. We're going to be playing pretty cautiously, though. This guy's 3-bet the 2 hands in a row. The last time we saw him 3-bet was ace king, so we can't really, just the fact that he's doing it 2 hands in a row, we can't make too many assertions about it. And yeah, we're just going to let it go. Queen of diamonds was a good start, but unfortunately nothing else helped. We have a gutter. We are going to bet said gutter. Again, ace high board's better for our range than it is for his, so I see no reason to check. And we are gonna check now and just try to realize our equity. The ace is a really bad card for us to rep, because if he does have a hand, like say if he has a hand like Queen 10, Jack 10, those types of hands, he might call flop, and I don't think he's ever gonna be folding the river. It's very hard for him to have bluffs there. You can have like Queen Jack, that kind of hand, but in general he's not gonna have too many bluffs at all. Now let's hope this table doesn't break. Let's hope we have a couple more seats fill up soon. If not, we can find some more pretty easily though, obviously. And we get 3-bet, we're just going to fold the suited king. It's a particularly raggedy suited king. We are going to defend the 9-queen face of the button open. Because this is only 3-handed now, obviously ranges are going to be that bit looser all around. But I mean 9-queen, when we're getting a discount on the price, we're getting the big blind discount, is going to be a pretty damn profitable call all around. And ace-queen we are going to be playing, in most scenarios at least. When it's folded to us, of course that is one. The 4-5, nothing we're going to be doing there. And the ace-deuce has some potential to be played. We might elect to use it as a 3-bet bluff from a late position open. If the button opens, that is exactly what we're going to do. And if it's folded to us, obviously we just steal ourselves with it. So we'll make it €1 on top to go dealer, 140 in total. Doesn't look like we're getting another player here. Let me just have a quick look. I'll see if there are any other tables that are a bit fuller. It doesn't look like it, unfortunately. That's okay. We'll wait for other people, or wait for another seat to free up on a table that is full currently. Although now it's gone down to heads up, I'm really not keen about playing heads up while recording a video, so we'll try to move on to another table sooner rather than later. Flop top pair on a relatively scary board. We have a gutter, but I mean obviously flushes are possible. He's not going to have that many flushes, but he's going to have a reasonable number of flush draws. He has all better ace-x in his range as well, of course, but we do have the best hand here a reasonable chunk of the time. We're certainly not check folding top pair here. It's a pretty good turn. Pretty good turn. Like obviously, I mean 6-7 is possible for sure, but it's not all that likely. And we're going to have a c-bet here with our overcards with our middling backdoor diamond draw. It's a pretty reasonable card for us. We're going to bet it again here when we pick up this much equity. And we're just going to check call here again. This guy has elected to call down. Let me chop it up. We're going to go for the rip here just because we have so many nutted hands in our range here. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh, we didn't have anywhere close to the amount of equity that we thought we did. I felt that, as I said, like our range is just incredibly nutted there, and I did not expect him to ever have overpairs the way he played that pre-flop. So I felt that that was going to get through pretty frequently. Obviously I stand corrected, but hey, these things happen from time to time. But we have all the flushes in our range there. We have sets. He doesn't really have that many sets, I think, when he plays it that way. And as I said, we have all of them, so I think in general it's a pretty reasonable bluff. I mean, even with pocket kings, I mean, I'm not folding kings there, but it's not like a trivial call there because we do look so incredibly nutted with that line. And dream turn here for us, obviously. Let's see if we can win a stack back just before we round up our video. This will be one of the last hands. We're just going to call again here. If we raise, it just looks quite scary to him. This extra diamond is a bit of a disaster for us, obviously. I mean, I don't think there's many marginal hands that he's going to call with here. Like, he either has a big diamond that'll call a big bet, or he's going to be folding to pretty much any sizing, so we might as well go big. Just going to go for a pop. Unfortunately, I do think he folds a decent chunk of the time, but hey. Oh, we got called. Nice, we'll take it. So we get some of our money back there. So between the two, we lost a stack over here, but we've won a stack over here. So for the session, we're about even. I haven't been tracking the results 100%, but we're close enough to it, if not a little bit up. So that's going to be part 3 rather, and we'll be back again very soon for part 4. I'm going to record it now in a moment. We'll wait until we get another table going, and we'll kick it off from there. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will chat to you soon. As always, if you have any questions or comments about any of the hands played, feel free to fire them at me in the relevant comment section of the social medias, on the YouTube, on PokerVIP, anywhere like that, and I will endeavour to get back to you in due course. Thank you very much for watching, guys.